My good friend Walter and I, when we first started developing games together, we came up with this framework that we really loved that we called kind of steel versus soft. The steel stuff in the game is the kind of the spine of the game, the parts of the game that are already really working really well, parts of the game that are really critical in order for the game to be what it is. It's this essential parts of it that test well, that we like, that we're excited about, that we don't really want to move right now. Uh, and then the soft stuff is basically everything else. Anything that is not steel is categorically soft. It's disposable. It is untested. It's maybe merely an implementation detail. So the reason we had to come up with this framework is that when you're developing a game, there's all these different parts of it that have to work together. And it can become very difficult and confusing to understand what's working, what are the root causes, what problem are we trying to solve, what actually needs changing here, because it's this dynamic system, and during testing it's rapidly changing. And so it's kind of difficult to understand, like, what are the things, what are the actual mechanisms that are a problem here, what are the potential solutions, and what can we change to get the results that we want to get. And when you're doing this, it's very, very helpful to understand which parts of it are steel, which parts of it are immovable, which parts of it need to remain in place because they're good, and which parts of it are merely implementation details. And I did this a couple times recently, and I can give an example of this because I really love this. And this is something that Walter and I have continued to use, like even at like work. We continue to use it in the game design we've done, but we've carried this long past this project into other projects as well. So as a reminder, this game is about an emperor building a game, or building a city in the past, while wanderers search that city in the present and find relics. These new relics give them new abilities. This is the core of the game. This is the center of the game. This is the spine that we keep coming back to, where it's like this is a really kind of central idea that is immovable. This is steel, right? But the question of, like, how exactly do you build that city, and how exactly do the wanderers find relics and play them and interact with each other and interact with the golem? Right now, all of that stuff is just implementation details, right? And like when you're first prototyping something, you sort of just have to take a swing. You have to take like a best guess at what's going to work for that. And so in my case, I had this, thought that I've even showed this before, that there would be a board. And I spent kind of a lot of time actually like agonizing over this and kind of figuring out, like, what are the shapes of it? How do the different pieces connect? What are the different regions of this board? All this kind of stuff, right? And I spent a lot of time on it because this was just sort of my first best guess. Was like, okay, well, if you have a city building emperor, maybe they have these cards that I've shown before that like have requirements of like what they need to be next to. So we have this, this card here that says like it needs to be next to these types of other landmarks in order to play it there. And I just assumed that this would be on a board. And for months now, I've been kind of like working with a board, and things were not feeling the way that I wanted them to feel. And I was trying to kind of construct, as I talked on here in the past, like these like puzzles sort of that I want the emperor to have to basically be like, I want to play this cool complex building, but I'm going to have to configure a situation where all the pieces are in the right place in order for me to build it. And my first thought was a board with like restrictive regions and terrain types was the right way to do that. And as I got deeper and deeper into it, I had to kind of pause because I was like, okay, something isn't working here. And I eventually just had this thought, what if you just got rid of the board? And instead, you basically just play these cards face down on the table. And so if you play one of these ones that produces a resource, it shows on the back of it that it's producing the resource. And then eventually, when you have this one that needs to be adjacent to those three resources, you are able to play that card adjacent to the other ones. And it immediately opened up all these ideas. And it made the whole thing feel way more dynamic. It also made the whole thing feel more organic. And the original board, these regions were all spread out. And so the way that you built was like kind of outside towards the middle, which is not how a real city organically develops. And so it felt kind of funky. And the Wanderers had to like go between these locations to even find anything in the early game when there weren't very many locations out there. This feels like you have this little like nucleus of a city and it bubbles out from there. And it naturally happens that the same types of buildings are grouped together into almost like regions of your cities. And the theme of the game, part of the theme of the game, city building, is now happening in a much more organic and realistic way. If you could say realistic, the game is fantasy and silly, but that was a good indicator of like, okay, I took something that was soft, the board, which is merely an implementation detail to achieve this bigger vision. And I just ripped it out completely, and it actually made the game better, and it led to a bunch of new ideas that were really interesting. This happened again this past week because I finally got to the point. So to back up to this point, I've just been testing the Emperor's experience because it's something I can test by myself, one player, and just try to get the city building part of it feeling really good, so that then I can layer in parts of it, which is that, okay, so you built this city that left a bunch of relics out there, and now the Wanderers get to go find them. So my first best guess at how that worked, I was like, okay, so Wanderers are like moving from location to location. They are picking up these old relics, and when they pick up a relic, that gives them the ability to do something cool in the future, right? So my first best guess was like a deck building situation, like you go into the armory or whatever, and you pick up the knight's shield, and you like add that to your deck and you like play it at some point. That's been kind of my operating assumption for a long time. And I finally sat down this weekend and like played a fully built out, like, here's all the locations, here's the relics that they produce, here's the golem cards they produce. And when I started picking these things up, I had this feeling that I always have when I play deck builders, not always, but oftentimes when I play deck builders, which was, I was like, okay, so now I have this knight's shield in my hand, but I only get to play it when I happen to draw it. So it's like I have a shield in giant air quotes, but I only get to use the shield when I draw it, which always feels very odd to me. And I don't know. There's something about that just doesn't quite connect thematically for me. I'm like, you have a shield, right? And the other part of it was like, I was running into other game design problems here where it was like, if you go to the armory and you find like 4 weapons, why would you not just pick all of them up, And then it's like you're carrying 4 weapons and 3 shields and a whole bunch of other stuff. Like it just totally kind of breaks the immersive feel of it. But again, I was able to confidently throw that out and just quickly say, I tested half the game and I said, okay, deck building is just wrong. It's just the wrong implementation. And that's okay. It's a little bit scary and destabilizing to be like, all right, I'm going to go do something totally different instead. But I had a lot more confidence doing that because I was like, the deck building aspect of this is merely an implementation detail, and it's soft. It's untested. It's not the central idea of the game. Yeah, I don't know that it's good yet. It was a theory. I like threw it out there as like, this is my best guess at what the relic system should be like. And quickly, as I kind of like sat back and closed my eyes. It's like, what do I want? And it's like, I don't want to build a deck. I want to build a kit. I want to build a character like an RPG. And it was like, I want there to be a right-handed weapon and a left-handed weapon or item, and like a belt item, and a different kind of like leg wear that you could wear. So if you have like leather boots, you can move more spaces on your turn. And if you have big, heavy armor stuff, you can move less, but you're more armored. And all of a sudden, this like explosion of ideas came out. And it was like, okay, well, this is so great because now you get to cut all the rules out about deck building and drawing and all this stuff. You get to have far fewer relics in the game and have the relics matter a lot more because you pick up whatever the armor gauntlets and you put them on, and they're you only need one of them. You don't need a bunch. And then it also, there's this new system that I was like, oh, this is a system I could really play with because I could do some things that are a little bit untraditional. Like I have these kind of like magic things in the game that are almost like incantations. But I also have these things where you can kind of like do these like rallying cries that help your allies and like boost them. And I was like, oh, how cool would that be if you had a slot that was like, it's not just like armor. You have a slot of like something that you're saying. You have like a mantra or something, and you get to like use that the way you would use an item. Like your mantra could be like, a rallying cry for your allies or an incantation or something else. This like makes the religion path more interesting. What if there was something that was like you have to like have a vow of silence, meaning that you leave that slot empty and that makes some other relic more powerful? All of a sudden it was like this explosion of new ideas. It felt more immersive, it felt better, and it was just like this really exciting improvement to the game in the same way that removing the board was. So it was just like within a couple weeks, it was like once like I was honing in on like the core of this game, I was like, I don't need the board. I don't need deck building. Those were just like two things that were the best guess early on. And I could throw them out. It's totally fine. These are replaceable. I replaced them, and immediately the game is like noticeably better. So hopefully more of that to come. But steel versus soft, it's like this really awesome thing that Walter and I came up with years ago. And it's still proven very useful today.